Hi everyone, I'm Sanjana and I have Declan Mulkeen with me today to talk about what good ABM looks like. Declan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sanjana. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking ABM.
Same here. And Declan is currently the CMO of StrategicABM and he's also an ABM advisor to many B2B tech brands. That's not it. He lives and breathes ABM. So he's also the host of a podcast called Let's Talk ABM. So if you want to learn more about ABM from Declan, then you should definitely subscribe to his podcast. All right, so back to our topic. Like before we get into the topic, I thought I'll ask you, a little bit about your background. Like where did you start and where are you now? Can you talk to us about that?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm obviously the CMO of Strategic ABM. Obviously, we're an ABM agency. As an agency, our heritage we were founded in the UK, just south of London. But since, like many companies over the years, we've obviously grown to be an international company with employees and clients all over the world. And I think it's an interesting mix, really. We're kind of probably about 50% North America, 50% EMEA, and a little bit happening down in Asia Pacific as well. So that's with regards to the company. With regards to myself, a bit of a weird journey. I've been involved in sales and marketing for many years. I used to be an English teacher, ironically enough, and many years ago. Yeah, I used to teach English in Spain. Probably not a very good teacher, but I had a lot of fun and I had some great students. But then I got involved in marketing. I went to business school here in Spain, actually in Barcelona, and then that kind of took me on this kind of sales and marketing journey for the last 20 years or so. I'm not sure, but I've been involved in sales and marketing. So I think it's really important actually that marketers need to have a strong sales, or rather a strong commercial acumen. They need to have a strong sales background. Not everyone can obviously be in marketing that's been in sales, clearly, but I think it gives me such a huge advantage having run sales teams, been a sales director. I always say to people, I've eaten badly, I've slept in bad hotels, all over the world doing sales. And so when I talk to salespeople, both internally in the agency, but also with our clients, I think they have a lot more respect for me because they realize that I actually understand their job. And talking about ABM, obviously a huge part of ABM is sales. And without that sales alignment, it just doesn't work. So I bring that to the table, really, which I think is quite interesting.
Awesome, excellent. So like my question is about that. First question is about that. I realize that more and more marketers are looking to account-based marketing to boost revenue, but in reality, it won't work for every company, right? For instance, if you're a small business with limited time and resources, it may not be feasible to target specific accounts, but for those with the manpower and money required to implement ABM, it has the potential to yield results. So, with that in mind, what does a good ABM strategy look like, and what's involved in creating a successful first ABM campaign?
So I think the question that we actually ask clients when they talk about ABM and ABM strategy is we ask, and we dig a lot into whether or not ABM is the right strategy for them. So there's a number of questions that we'd actually look to ask them around their business, around the size of the accounts they're looking to win, what type of sale it is, etc. And so I think there's some question we asked around, are they selling a high value complex solution? That's a good choice for ABM. Are they targeting mid-market or enterprise accounts? ABM is a good solution there. Do they have a long sales cycle? ABM is a good solution there. Are they looking to target a wider group of decision makers? ABM is a good solution there. So conversely, if you as a company are still at the kind of product market fit stage, ABM isn't a good solution. If you have a low deal value, your solution product, ABM is not the best solution there because cost. It's time, effort, money, people, resources, etc. If you're not targeting enterprise, or at least mid-market to enterprise, ABM is not a great solution, or not necessarily the best solution. So I think it's not always a case of, it's not always binary, right? It's not always 1 or 0. It's not ABM or not ABM, but there's just a number of decisions that we walk our clients through. And myself and my colleague Fez, who we run this workshop called ABM Lunch and Learn, and we've delivered about, in the last couple of years, probably about 120, 130, 140 of these to a whole bunch of really interesting B2B tech companies all over the world. And what's interesting is not all of them are ready. And so there's a readiness, there's almost like a readiness question that we ask in terms of their teams, in terms of their clients, in terms of the business outcome. And I think that's probably the biggest question really from a strategy point of view, is what are you trying to achieve? For example, are you trying to achieve, are you trying to change perceptions? So for example, that's quite very often in ABM, is you might be a very strong brand in the kind of SMB space. You may be a really great player in the kind of SaaS, people, demo, sign up, subscription model. And then you realize, or your investors or however, that actually you want to now start migrating towards enterprise. Now that migration from being an SMB player to an enterprise player, it's a very long journey, and it's a tough journey, and not everyone makes it. But trying to change the perception of the market to say, hey, we know you guys do, and then no, we don't do that. We also do you. Oh, so ABM is a very good play there for that change of perceptions. And we work with a lot of clients where they've got to do that. They've got to move. And obviously they keep that part of their business in SMB, and then they want to have a very nice large business in enterprise as well. So that's one strategy reason to go after it, to use ABM as a tactic or rather as a strategy. The other one obviously is if you are looking to penetrate your accounts. And as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I do a podcast called Let's Talk ABM, and one of my guests from a company called Finastra, which is a huge fintech company, Marnie, she was explaining that her company are really good at winning business, really good. But what they were finding was that expanding that business was much more difficult. So, and that's, very often winning is the easiest thing. It's actually what you do once you've won the client, because clients these days are so complicated, so complex. There are so many departments, divisions, decision makers, buying committees, decisions to be made that how do you get into an account, what the classic kind of land and expand. So once you get into that account, ABM can actually, kind of almost like account-based strategies can help you to know where to go in the account, how to kind of take the success you have in one place in the account and use that success story in the HR department to take you into the operations department, into the marketing department, into the finance department, etc. So that's a really good play. And just two final ones to finish off on is what, obviously the foundation of ABM dating back, more than 20 years now, is around existing customers. And conversely, a lot of people think that ABM is for new business, but actually the origins of ABM is existing customers, growing existing customers. But when you're looking to go new logos, new clients, new prospects, then obviously there are two scenarios. One is obviously when you as a company have a list of accounts that you've agreed and it makes perfect sense. You've got the data, you've talked to sales, everyone is on board, and you've got the right group of accounts that you want to target, then that is a good use case for ABM to kind of penetrate and to actually win those accounts. And then the second one, which actually links a little bit to deal-based marketing, DBM, is when you're looking to win very large opportunities. Okay. And in my previous life, I was involved in an awful lot of RFPs and tenders and working with the public sector and governments all over the world. They're very tough to win. and you've got to influence a lot of people. You've got to kind of get a lot of people on board. You've got to kind of learn about the kind of compliance and a whole bunch of stuff. So
Yeah.
ABM can actually be very helpful to help you to influence a lot of people across that account as you're trying to win it over a period of months. So I think those 4 contexts for ABM are kind of going back to answer your question about ABM and ABM strategy, really.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent takeaways for the listeners. One thing that caught my interest is how does ABM help to win existing customers? Can you talk to us about that? Like what really happens?
So when you've got an existing customer and you're using ABM with that existing customer,
how do you do that?
Well, so the case be there's many use cases, and there's some really great examples actually of some recent interviews that I've done on Let's Talk ABM that I would recommend people listen to, with Danny Nail, who was at Microsoft for many years. He's just moved to Salesforce. Okay. I've got another one coming up with another gentleman from Microsoft who talks about this. Marnie, who I mentioned from Finastra, who talks about their land and expand strategy. I think if your audience, I don't want to steal your audience to take them to my podcast, but if they can listen to 2 podcasts, I recommend they listen to yours, Sanjana, and they listen to a little bit of mine. So that will give them the kind of context and give them some real life examples of companies. Right. But just to summarize a little bit, what we find as an agency when we're working with customers, and we have that kind of business outcome remit to grow their existing customers. I think there's several use cases here. Use case number 1 is if you're selling a wide variety of solutions. If you think about a software company, if you've got a wide variety of solutions, it may well be that your customer number 1 is only buying a small subset of that range. Right. So obviously you are very keen for that customer to try to have access to everything that you do, for them to benefit from everything that you do. And so therefore there's a kind of an education journey that you need to take the customer on to say, okay, well, you've taken our CAD, our computer aided design product. That's fantastic. But did you know we've also got this and that? Because what you can't do at the beginning of a relationship with a customer is confuse them. Because if you're clearly working with the customer because they have a need, a specific pain, a specific challenge, you need to solve that problem, right? What you can't do is say, hey, yeah, we're going to solve that problem. Oh, by the way, you need to buy this, because the customer is going to say, hey, you should listen to my problem, solve my problem. Don't solve my problem that I may or may not have in 3 years' time. So I think that's a use case for ABM is you've got a much wider portfolio of products and solutions and services and consultancy and everything. How do you make that customer aware of all that? And it's obviously, if I've sold to you, Sanjana, then obviously there's a lot more people behind you. There's many more departments and divisions. I need to get into that company. I need to understand you. I need to really, I need to know you better than you know yourself. I need to know I need to know your problems, and I need to be able to tell you about your future problems that you probably have. Maybe you might not have thought about yet. And I can, because I've got a wider view of the market, and I say, hey, this is coming. You need to think about that. We've got an answer. So that's use case number 1. Use case number 2, obviously, is these large companies who are particularly, doing a lot of ABM. They're constantly buying. They're constantly buying new companies. They're constantly acquiring. They're constantly merging companies. So when you have a company that's got a lot more companies behind it, then you've got to obviously then say, well, okay, we've got all these companies, we've got all these new solutions, we've got to bring those into our clients as well. So if you think about, a lot of these mergers that take place, they're trying to bring together the power of 2 companies, bring together the power of 2 customer bases, and then leverage those solutions into those customers. So that's a very strong use case as well. And I think the third use case is adoption. And by adoption, I mean, you may put a solution into a client, you may do all the onboarding, you may do everything you want, but is it actually being used in the first instance? And B, is it actually being used properly? So using ABM, going through the whole kind of process, of awareness, educate, influence, etc. Taking the customer through that journey of making them aware, educating them, influencing them, and getting them to commit. Doing that equally for adoption is really important, because if you want your product to be sticky, if you want to be a trusted advisor to that company, if you want to have a long-term relationship with that company, then they need to really, really value your product or your solution. And they need to see your product or solutions as an integral part of the success of their company. Because otherwise, somebody else will make a phone call one day and say, hey, Sanjana, I've got an amazing solution. And you say, come and see me. And next thing you call Declan and say, Declan, thank you for your time, but we've changed supplier. And I'm saying, I thought we had a relationship, right? So this happens a lot. So using account-based strategies and tactics and into those customers is a very good use case.
Awesome. I think once you start, launching a successful ABM campaign, it doesn't stop. It goes on and on. That's excellent. All right. So can you share with us some inspiring or creative ABM campaigns that you have come across, and like what did you think of them?
In the work that we do as an agency, or in general?
Yeah, as an agency, you should have seen a lot of creative ABM campaigns with your clients. Can you share some of them with us?
I have indeed. I mean, it's interesting actually, because we're just we've got some really interesting, and as I think, to use your word, inspiring and creative campaigns that we've been doing with a number of our clients, and we're going through this kind of process at the moment of just working with our clients to start to share that publicly, because I think a lot of the work, because in the B2B space, which is the B2B space is obviously different to the B2C space. Obviously, in the B2C space, we all see the campaigns, right? We see, on the TV, we see on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever we see it, right? In the B2B space, obviously, that relationship of the creative of the campaign is obviously much more closed between the customer and the target market that they're looking to looking to win, grow, retain, etc. But I can give you a flavor of some of the things that we do, just to give you. And I think it comes back to an interesting point, really, because I think, and this is one of my kind of, to use the expression, this is one of my kind of beefs in terms of one of the things that really kind of, I think, there's a misconception out there in the market, right? I think there's a misconception, and there's a belief that ABM is technology, right? Yeah. And because the technology vendors, who without naming them all, they're all great, and we work with a lot of them. They've done a very good job of marketing, and they've done a very good job of linking technology with ABM. So when people think ABM, they think it's synonymous with technology, and it's not. And so I think we use technology. We're pro technology. We've got some great technology in our business. We've got some great technology in our clients. All types of technology, which we could talk about potentially another time. But I think if you boiled ABM down to its essence, technology would not appear. If you kind of boiled it down and you say, well, how can I refine this? How can I distill this? What does ABM look like when you remove all the water and you distill it down? And there's no technology there at all. Okay, what there is very, very, very good strategy. And then with the strategy is everything that comes afterwards. And technology is one of the things that comes afterwards, but very good strategy, which leads to a very good, compelling value proposition, which identifies what the challenge is of the customer, talks to the customer in the language of the customer, not in your language, in the language of the customer, and makes the customer, sit back, stand up, and say, "Wow, that talks to me. That this campaign or this message or this direct mail or this experience that you've put me through." We talk a lot about account experience, and so we take our clients and our clients' clients, we take them through an account experience, which takes them through this journey of awareness, of education, of influencing, and then finally to commit. So if I just, that's just a kind of the prelude to basically kind of talk through a couple of campaigns really. So I think the essence of what we try to achieve with our clients is creating an emotional impact, making that impact tied back to something which is very deep in terms of the customer business outcome that they're looking to achieve, that's tied back to the value proposition that they're looking to talk to the market about. They're looking to tell the market, look, this is happening out there. This is a challenge. This is a pain. You're experiencing it. The market is experiencing it. Have you thought about this as a way of solving that pain? So everything that we do has to take the customer through that process. So if I talk about, I'll talk about a couple of examples. So
sure.
With one client, for example, we've done a whole series of campaigns. It's kind of like in the kind of media world, and they've got a job to educate very large consumers of media about what the changing landscape of media is. Because as you know yourself, we've got an iPhone, we've got a tablet here, we've got everything. You're sitting there, and obviously we've got all this technology around us. So the way that we consume media and the way that we watch TV, or whether it's Netflix or Amazon, or whether it's the BBC, and how we're no longer sitting down as a family in the evening at 7 o'clock to watch our favorite show. So one of the campaigns we've been doing with one of our clients is just that kind of education process, and to educate media buyers around that challenge and around the fact that people are now, to use an expression, they are dual screening. So I'm looking at you, well, I'm watching TV rather. I'll be watching TV while I'm talking to my mother on WhatsApp, etc. So what we've done, obviously, is built a whole experience around that, which is a whole digital experience, which takes these potential customers of media through a learning journey for them to kind of learn, if you can imagine, a digital online environment that they go through, and they learn about the history of what's happening, what does the present look like, what the future holds, and how they can actually solve some of those challenges. So what we try to do is we try to wrap the clients in a complete digital, physical experience that starts off with, and if you said to me, what does that look like? Well, there are, I can talk to you about, for example, we create, online digital experiences. We create hub pages. We create, a number of digital assets around that. We create thought leadership. We take, for example, something which we are finding working really, really well. We take subject matter experts from our customers, and then they become the face of the campaigns. So it's no longer about sales. It's no longer about marketing. It's about the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer of the customer, talking to the market and talking to his or her other CTOs. So what we call peer-to-peer, for them to say, look, guys, this is what's happening. This is what I'm experiencing as a CTO. These are some of the issues and challenges that I've faced as a CTO. This is some information I'd love to share with you about what's happening, and to paint a picture of what today looks like, but also paint a picture of what tomorrow looks like. So I think trying to go back to that kind of starting point of creating a great strategy. Everything but rests on that, and then you build out from there with an account experience where you build this kind of very emotional, compelling, impactful, online, offline, physical, digital experience that takes the client through that journey. It's a learning journey very often, and I think there's a really important thing here that Gartner, who obviously are quite well known in the whole kind of B2B space, they did some really interesting research where they talked about, I think, about 1,100 B2B buyers, about what their problems are and how they like to find solutions. And Gartner wrote about this, and I would recommend anybody to Google this. And they talk about something called sense making. And what they found in their research was that those suppliers, providers who can actually help their customers or their potential customers to make sense of the information and the challenges that are actually out there have a better success of actually keeping the customer or winning new customers. And I think that's something which I find really interesting, actually, that the term sense making. So I think if you think about the overload that we've all got of information, the overload we've got of media, the overload we've got of choice, you know, in the old days, in the caveman days, or cavewoman days rather, we had the choice of eating or not eating. We had the choice of eating mammoth or not eating anything, or maybe some carrots. There was not much choice, but nowadays we have infinite choice. So so in a way, I always say that you as a provider, yes, of course you're competing with your competitors, of course you are, but you're actually competing with the whole market, because how do you actually make people stop? How do you actually make people think? How do you actually make people say, hey, I'm going to make time to listen to you, or I'm going to make time to understand what you are talking about? So I think there's kind of two scenarios here. You've got if you're Terminus and you're competing against 6 Sense, or you're competing against Demand Base, or you're competing against whoever, that's one thing. But at the same time, you're just competing against the market, because the market is talking in general. So I think that term, I would urge people to have a little read about that Gartner research around sense making, because I think it's really interesting.
Definitely. I think to summarize what you just said, having a good strategy and a good story with an emotional impact, and with good technology, like if you combine all of these three together, I think you will be able to create a good, successful campaign.
I would definitely agree.
Great. So we have come to the end of the episode. So before I leave you, I just have one more question to ask you. Like, what's the one piece of advice you want to give it away to our listeners? Like, it could be, you know, hypothetically, let's say you're getting a career started, like what would you tell to yourself? Or, you know, is there anything else that you want to share it with our listeners?
Advice around
anything,
doing
anything.
ABM?
No, anything.
Oh, well, that's actually a very difficult question. That's a very difficult question. Okay, I suppose my advice would be, actually, there's a question I ask a lot of times when I'm on my podcast as well, which is a very similar question to the one you just asked. And that question is, what does it take to be a good ABMer?
Okay.
And the answer that I get back when I ask that to kind of ABM thought leaders around the world, from the likes of Microsoft and Salesforce and Fujitsu and all these kind of people, one thing, there's kind of a couple of things, but one thing that comes back, or two things rather that come back, one is a sense of curiosity. And curiosity, or being nosy. And by that, I mean, you've got to get really deep into the customers. You've got to get really deep into the data. You've got to get really deep into the insights. You've got to get really deep into knowing what's actually going on. And I think being very curious and actually trying to actually get all of that data together, which, you know, some of it you control yourself, some of it you've got to go and commission, some of it you've got to go and get from third parties and, you know, agencies or whatever. But trying to harness and get all that data together to help you actually understand the customers, or the current customers, or indeed future customers that you're trying to win. Trying to bring all that data together to actually help you to build really compelling ABM strategies and programs, I think is really important. That's number one, to be curious. And I think number two is what I mentioned earlier, which is the commercial acumen. And I think the more that us marketers can spend with our commercial colleagues and our sales colleagues, the better. Because
Okay.
ABM, I think one thing that separates ABM, there are many things that separates ABM from other B2B strategies, but one thing that is very clear is the level of alignment with sales that you need to achieve. And without sales, ABM just isn't ABM. So the more time you can build relationships, the more times you can spend time with your sales colleagues, even, spend time on calls, join meetings, learn, it will pay dividends for your relationship with sales, but also for your better marketing.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Declan, for spending your time with me today. I'll give your LinkedIn profile in the description and your podcast link in the description so people can connect with you later if they want to talk about ABM. It was nice talking to you, Declan, and talk to you again.
Lovely. Thank you for having me on your show today, and all the best for the future.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.